Alright guys, welcome to the Naughty Fisherman. Today I'm going to be covering the Centauri Knot, or Centauri Knot, however you want to pronounce that. It is kind of the dark horse of the beginner fishing knots. It's, to my knowledge, not mentioned a lot. It is kind of deceptively simple. We'll go over that a little further. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so this is a kind of deceptively simple knot, as I said before. It is going to be a series of 3 loops around the main line and then a tag end going through those 3 loops. Now the biggest problem here is your last loop tightening up before the other 2 can pass through, which can cause the other ones to not form properly and can cause the knot to get formed wrong. So let's go ahead and try and avoid that. So first things first, take your main line right here, come through your eyelet, and then you're going to come up. Now you want to give yourself plenty of tag to work with. So if you were actually doing this with the actual fishing line, I would say something like this, just so you can actually form the loops and get them done properly. And if you're following the actual diagrams you can find online, what they want you to do is make your first loop like this. So you're going to run it right around the back of that main line, and then you're going to pin where it comes around by itself, right here between your thumb and forefinger. Then you're going to go ahead and make a second loop, basically on top of the first. So it's just like that. What I'm going to do though is I'm actually going to reverse that, just so I can try and avoid the other problem I'm going to have. And then you're going to make your third loop. Now, the reason I did that is because a lot of times when you're trying to pull this, especially in the form of yarn, if you're trying to practice with that, like I do, it can bind up at the first loop or the last loop and prevent the other 2 from slipping through, which will cause your knot to look really weird and not work. So now what we're going to do is we're going to form that, and we're going to try and do this without completely screwing it up. So you can already see that first one's going. So what I like to do, this is not something they tell you to do in the actual diagrams, so I like to pull on these, try and get these 2 to come through real quick. Now granted, that looks like a mess, but I did it right. It should. Tighten right up, just like that. All right, so you're gonna pull that down. And it should slide right down your main line, all the way down to your hook. And there we go. Granted, it's not the prettiest looking in the yarn form. This will look much nicer in the fishing line form. But that is your Centauri knot right there. Like I said, not the most beautiful thing in the world to look at, but it does look better in the fishing line. So, the other way of doing this is to kind of wrap it around your thumb a few times, just the same way you're making loops this way. But if you are having trouble pinning it down, you can always wrap it around your thumb, just to kind of be your placeholder, and it will create the loops for you, and then you can just pass it through while you're holding onto them. All right, let's go ahead and cut that tag right there real quick. Show you what it looks like when that's not there. And boom, much nicer. If you're gonna be fishing with it, it's just gonna be like this, and there you go. Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't give you guys an example of what I was talking about with that technique of wrapping around your finger. I know I mentioned it. I don't want to just kind of tell you guys what that is and just move on. So what you can do is if you're having trouble forming those 3 loops, especially down the road, you can always do is this, and this is not covered in the usual diagrams. You can come through, and instead of just trying to create the loops freehand, you can kind of do this. Provided you don't stick yourself with your hook. 1, and go. 2, and 3. So as you guys can see, it's literally wrapped around my finger right here. So what'll happen is when you pull that off, you're gonna have all 3 of your loops right there. They're all wrapped around your fishing line, and you're good to go. I guess I got that 4th loop there, geez. And it'd just be the same method. You just come up through this right here. And boom. Pull that tight. And just like that. So like I said, if you're struggling with the other method, that is another way of doing it. Alright guys, so now for the actual fishing line. This is actually going to be easier than the other part was, just because the way the line works, it's a little stiffer and it'll form the loops a little bit better and not be as finicky when you form the knot. So I am using 4-pound monofilament. This is 4-pound Iserline. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I'm also going to be using a, I believe, size 8 mosquito hook for this video. So what you're going to do is you're going to, once again, go through the back of that hook, or the front, whichever way you prefer. This knot is not picky. And you're going to go ahead and grab that, and just like the diagrams show online, you are going to go ahead and do, like I said, this is going to be a little easier just because the line's a little stiffer. It'll form the loops a little easier. So you're going to form your first loop just like that. You're going to come back, grab that tag end. And this is the part you gotta be a little careful about, is it's gonna fight you a little bit on forming its loops, just because of the nature of the line. Beyond that, so now we've got 2, and now we've got, if it doesn't go around itself again, and then we've got our 3rd right there. So as you guys can kind of see, I've got, I can show you, 1. Second one's almost literally right on top. I don't know if you guys can see that right there. And the 3rd one's right there. So we're gonna go ahead and bring our tag end through. And as with any knot you're tying with fishing line, you wanna lubricate this as soon as you get to the point where you see friction starting, which would be right about here. So, gonna lubricate that real quick. Now the only problem with this one is it's gonna try and climb all over itself. So as you guys can see, it's coming down and boom. Now you don't want to tighten it completely just yet because you want to provide a little friction burn as you can. But as you guys can see, it's gonna slide right down to our hook. And then that's when you want to give it that little tug right there. And boom. You have the Centauri knot, just like that. Now let's go ahead and cut that tag real quick. So, like I said, it's kind of a dark horse, but not too bad. And if you're kind of looking at it when it's hanging, it's just gonna be just like that. It's gonna come right off that hook shank. Not gonna get in the way of your bait presentation or anything like that. Awesome. Alright guys, so that is the Centauri knot, however you want to pronounce it. Like I said in the beginning of this video, it's a bit of a dark horse. I didn't hear about it until just recently when I was looking up new knots to tie and seeing what the strengths were and everything. I do see the appeal of this one though. It is less moving parts. You don't have to do like 5 or 6 twists around, like the improved clinch knot. You're not forming a loop coming back through the eyelet. Especially when you're going down to like a size 12 or size 14 mosquito hook, which is nearly impossible to do. I've managed on the 12, I've never managed on the 14, so it does beat the Palomar knot in that respect. From what I've researched online, this one's mainly meant for smaller tackle, so really small hooks, so like size 20 treble, size 14 mosquito hook, all that much smaller gear that's a little harder to either double up through the eyelet or just tie really complicated knots with in general. I will be giving this a few test tries myself out in the field to see how it performs. I'll let you guys know about that. But so far, I'm liking it, especially on the ease of the actual fishing line. It does form the knot pretty much by itself. My only concern is it sometimes slips a little bit, so it will come back up. I'm assuming that won't be a problem when you have a fish tugging on your line, because it's going to pull against it, but we'll see. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and tight knots and tight lines. Till next time.